Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and we're breaking the internet today with a new flat earth model that is going to trigger all the coincidence theorists, the scientism cultists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, the authority-worshipping cultist bootlickers out there that just can't mentally handle that reality might not be what was reported to them on the idiot box their entire lives. In all the indoctrination facilities they attended using Rothschild, Rockefeller, Ghislaine Maxwell's father's textbooks. In those indoctrination facilities. And we will be doing all of this in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront. Unlike anything else out there, if you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, code podcaster requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind. Leave them in the comment section unless, of course, you were with us here live. Drop them in the live chat. I will try to get to all of them. And you can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. So, we've gone over bits and pieces, aspects of the issues with several different flat earth models, because a lot of the globe earth or the heliocentric cultist goofs, they just keep spamming these false dichotomies as if flat earth can only be one particular model, and that there aren't a whole bunch of different flat earth models, all with their different issues. But it has a new model solved potential issues. And even if it did, that still doesn't mean it's true. Again, for all the goofs out there, all the goof maxers, just because a model is internally consistent does not mean it's true. Welcome to Brian Cash, Run Boston Bear, Jeff U1P, Big Pine, Aaron, Scott Hawkins. Who's ready for some mind-shocking revelations? And a new model is unveiled that might account for quite a few things. Lord Racer, welcome. So, let's set the stage. Let's go over a quick video on perspective, because a lot of goofs don't understand perspective. I mean, there's even flat earthers who don't understand perspective. So, let's go into that first. We'll see if YouTube keeps the stream up or not. Yeah, so let's go into basic perspective here first. And then we'll get into the new model.
All I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.
Fair use, obviously. I don't know, this is like a compilation of a bunch of different videos here.
Okay, I want you to notice how the power lines merge inward and downward the further they are away from you. And the same thing when you look down a long corridor or a hallway. Notice how the lights on the ceiling merge downward and they seem to get smaller the further away they are. The same way with the doors, the same way with the floor. See how everything merges in and gets smaller? And you'll see the same thing here with the street lamps. Notice how they merge inward and downward the further away they are from you. And you'll see the same thing with railroad tracks. Notice how they merge inward and seem to get smaller towards the end and eventually disappear off into the horizon. And the same thing here. Notice how the tracks merge inward and seem to get smaller. So do the street lamps and the tiers to the right. as they fade off into the horizon. Remembering the ground is level and the objects are in a straight line, just like the bottles that we have on the table here. Notice they're all in a perfect straight line and they're all level. But watch what happens when we change the angle of perspective, as you can see here. Now, notice how all the bottles merge inward and seem to get smaller towards the end of the table. Now, if this table were longer, the bottles would disappear just like the street lamps and the railroad tracks.
One of the most shocking things is how many supposedly educated individuals at these indoctrination facilities, they claim that something disappearing over an alleged edge, because again, these goofs don't know the difference between apparent and true horizon. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gone over this, and yet a lot of these cultist goofs, they still hallucinate. They still hallucinate that there's no difference between true and apparent horizon. I mean, it's really weird. And then obviously with the precipitation, you get haze effect. So I've gone over this. I went over this originally on the Bryant Myers Flat Earth debate. Check that out. That's actually one of my favorite ones because it kind of goes over all of these issues. And so, because a lot of goofs, they'll point to Lake Pontchartrain or whatever, just the sun, somehow the sun setting proves a globe in these deranged goofs' minds, in these logical illiterates' minds. That means that the earth is a globe. It's just so weird. I mean, the earth could be a globe, obviously, but not because of that. That has nothing to do with that. And just the goofery, the absolute goofery that has to be addressed. In every single flat earth conversation, it's like crazy. Like there's just no basic literacy. Just doesn't exist on the globe side for whatever reason. But let's continue here.
Because they're going beyond the vanishing point, beyond the limit of our vision. Well, the sun does the same thing, as you can see here. Notice how it merges inward and downward and appears to get smaller in size the further that it moves away from you. It's just going out of your perspective. For instance, look at these street lights. Notice the one up close looks larger, and then they appear to get smaller the further away, and they merge inward and go downward. That's all due to perspective. These street lamps are not going over a curve, they're just going out of your line of sight. So, as you can see, the sun does not set nor does it rise. It only moves in and out of your perspective, your line of sight. And once it moves beyond the vanishing point, you just can't see it anymore. Kind of like a sunrise, for example. Take these street lamps. See how they merge inward and they seem large up close and they seem to get smaller the further away? Well, the same thing happens with a sunrise. If you watch the sun rise, as you can see here, notice how the further away the sun is, the smaller it appears. And as it gets closer, it appears to get larger. Just like the street lamps, just like the railroad tracks, just like a hallway. It's all due to perspective. And it also depends on your location, where you are positioned at when you are looking at the object that is moving away from you or moving toward you. Now, some people will see the sun directly over the head moving in a straight line, depending on which time of the year it is and what country you're in. But as you notice here, the sun appears to get smaller the further that it moves away, just like the street lamps. It's not going over a curve, it's just going out of your line of sight. And like I said, also it depends on your location and your position. Say, for instance, here, notice how the street lamps seem to merge to the left and downward. Okay, now watch as we move directly in line with them. Now you see how they're all in a straight line, merging downward towards the horizon. Now watch what happens when we get on this side of them. Okay, now notice how they merge inward and downward to the right. Like I said, it all depends on your location.
That's actually one of the best videos I've seen for the perspective, just how quickly he changes. And it's just a car driving on the road. Like, these are such basic concepts. Like, we're talking about children's level concepts here. And anybody who can drive, or if you can't drive, you could have somebody drive you, just go out on the road at night with street lamps and you can observe the same thing. So there's no need for faith. There's no need for any kind of blind faith in any of these Illuminati satanic textbooks. Which, again, that doesn't mean the information in them isn't accurate. But why would you trust it? Like, why would you put your blind faith in satanic occultists? It's kind of weird. Especially in the post-Epstein era. Like, coincidence theorist Cope is just out of control. Even in the post-Epstein era, you got goof still bootlegging the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Maxwell families. It's really weird. Really weird. Super weird. So, yeah, let's just continue here with this introduction to perspective with very good examples. This video is this might be my favorite video on perspective right here.
And where you're positioned at as the sun passes and is moving out of your line of sight. For example, if I move this bulb across this string, which is tied perfectly level across this countertop, it just looks like it's moving in a straight line. But let's look at it from down on the flat earth point of view, using the line of bottles as our horizon. As you can see, the light bulb is not going over a curve. It's going straight across the counter, across the string. It just appears that way due to perspective. Now, for example, let's look at it on a smaller scale. Take a person that is walking away from you, like right here. You notice the field goal and the bleachers are all at ground level. Now, watch what happens when the guy walks beyond your perspective, beyond your line of sight. Now you see, if this flat football field continued on and on, you eventually wouldn't see this guy anymore. He would disappear totally out of your line of sight. Now, we all know that there's no big curve in the middle of this football field. If it was, it'd be one heck of a game, right? So now I hope you can understand that the sun does not set nor does it rise. It merely only moves out of your line of sight due to perspective. Now, the last thing I want to show you is called crepuscular sun rays. Now, as you can see here, the sun rays are coming out right here to the left at around a 7.2 degree angle. Now, right here in the middle, they're coming straight down. Now, when you get back over here to the right, they're coming back out at a 7.2 degree angle. Now, a little bit of calculation will show that a 7.2 degrees on each side coming up to a perfect triangle puts the sun at about 4,000 miles up into the sky.
Now, there is some dispute on that because I'm not talking about dispute once the rays are breaking off, but if another object like the sun or a hologram, whatever, if the rays scatter from where that object is hitting, I mean, that's kind of the scientism explanation. I'm not claiming it's true or untrue, but you would have to have both situations to kind of see how it works, right? So I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't take as gospel. I mean, it does appear to be that way, but yeah, I'm not sure you can calculate it with... See, if there was no cloud, right? If there was no cloud, but even then, because if there's some kind of a dome, and whatever way the light is refracting or rarefracting or bouncing in some fashion could cause those rays to do that, even if the object was beyond the dome, right? Do we know anything about the properties of the dome or even the properties of the object, the sun in question, whether it's a hologram or not? So that's a little bit of a tougher issue here.
All the ancients knew this.
Now I'm going to prove that to you really, really quick. Here I have a piece of cardboard that I have cut the edges out perfectly on the edge of this cardboard. Now, over here we have a flashlight, which we're going to use as our sun source. Now, let's go over here and turn the light out. Notice that the shadow of the edges of the cardboard are parallel with each other. That would be 93 million miles away. They'd all be parallel with each other. Now, let's watch what happens to the shadows of these edges when I move them in close to the light source. Now, about right here.
Now, the reason this example is actually an example of a non-congruent argument logical fallacy is because the properties of both the objects he's using there are known. Whereas if there's some kind of a dome or some kind of a hologram sun with unknown refracting, refracting, or whatever properties, it's a lot tougher. It's a lot tougher to say you know exactly how the light is hitting the cloud or the dome before the cloud and then scattering after the fact. We don't know any of these things, obviously. So here on MindShock, we're not going to stack a house of cards of assumptions. But if you have known properties, obviously this guy is correct with his example right on the screen with the known properties, but trying to make it a congruent example to the sun bouncing light through clouds with or without a dome, I mean, that's tough. That's tough.
Here is a 7.2 degree angle,
which proves that the sun has to be very local and close to give crepuscular sun rays. And like I said, the ancient Egyptians knew this for thousands of years. They even depict it in their artwork, and it's hidden right there in your face every day. So
that's a good one. Okay, in the chat here, Sandmaster, that's a cool name, says, hello MindShock, I heard your interview with Flat Earth Dave. You both proposed difficult definitive proofs for Flat Earth. How about a wire or a rope stretched over a lake? The problem with that, well, people haven't people done something similar to that, or even lasers, whatever? Here's the problem with that. If you take a globe and you carve out a flat lake in the globe, the lake could still measure flat, right? Unless the lake would have to be such a large size to the point where, a globe wouldn't be possible. But if the Earth is a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, a mile lake is nothing. A 10-mile lake is nothing. So even if the lake did measure flat, that wouldn't prove the Earth is not a globe. Wouldn't prove it flat. I mean, it's too limited of an experiment. It's way too limited. So that's the issue with that one. That's why I like what I came up with is this could falsify the globe with the claimed continents and their positions relative to each other in Antarctica. If you fly planes or drones that with like these large colored smoke trails, like at like an air show, and then you have people in boats all along the way from Antarctica to the tip of South America, from Antarctica to the tip of South Africa, and from Antarctica to Australia. To make it even more definitive, you could also do it with islands in between, like also go to New Zealand and a few islands between South America and South Africa, and between South America and New Zealand. There's a couple islands out there too. So you live stream the whole thing, and then you have extra drones flying on both sides of every airplane, live streaming the whole thing for many hours, and then you have people on boats all along the way with line of sight verification on the planes with different colored exhausts. And that's my idea. So it's expensive, but it's nowhere near as expensive as like a NASA mission. I mean, it would definitely run, millions of dollars, but you're not talking tens of millions. You're not talking about billions. You could do this for millions of dollars, probably less than 10 mil. So, yeah, let me catch up on some more comments here. Let's see. Official Ethan W. says, good point, Bruce. Crepuscular rays aren't proof in one way or the other, but can be explained in a FLIRF model. Yeah, they can be explained a couple different ways, but not adequately. There's too much missing information on what is the light source, how exactly does it work, is there or is there not a dome, and how does that affect the light? So, yeah. Okay. So let's continue.
As you learned earlier, the sun does not go over the horizon, it goes into the horizon, moving beyond the limit of our vision with our normal eyes. But if you take a telescope or a good camera and zoom in on the sun as you think it's setting over the horizon, you can see right here, it'll pop right back up into the sky because your eyes can't see that far away. It looks like it's setting over the horizon, going over.
And here's another great example for the goofs. Just put a dot on a piece of paper and hang it across like a large living room or bedroom if the room is big enough. You won't see the dot. That doesn't mean it went over some kind of edge, because human vision has limitations.
Over the horizon, but it's not. It's just going so far away you can't see it anymore with the naked eye. But as you see right here, with a telescope or a good zoom lens camera, it pops right back up into the sky, proving that it doesn't go over a curved ball. And that is the law of perspective.
All right, so let's go to the next video now. I want to do a quick intro on the, actually, let's do the Southern Stars first. I actually used clips of this before. On Southern Star Trails Explained, I have a clip on this on the MINDSHOCK channel. This is a little more of an extensive video, so let's dive into this just to set the stage here, because if there are some new scientism cultists here or whatever, they always bring up these arguments, so let's address them first before we get to the brand new Flat Earth model. Just so if there are any in good faith scientism cultists or globe earth defenders, that they are armed with all of the information necessary to mount a good faith defense of the globe against any of these flat earth models.
Earth is a level, motionless plane with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around us just as you experience every day. The North Pole is the magnetic monopole center point.
And yes, a lot of this is Eric Dubay, who may or may not be a shill. If you check out my Eric Dubay Flat Earth shill video for some very big questions regarding Dubay. But obviously it would be a genetic logical fallacy to claim that he's wrong, even if he is a shill. We can examine his arguments for their own merit, unlike all the fallacious goofs out there.
With Polaris, the North Pole star, situated directly above. Polaris is the only motionless star in the heavens, with all the other constellations revolving perfect circles over the Earth every night. The so-called planets, known to the ancients as wandering stars, were named such because they were observed then, as we can observe today, to wander the heavens, taking their own unique spirograph-like patterns, making both forward and retrograde motions over and around the Earth during their cycles. Meanwhile, the fixed stars were named such because they were observed then, as we can observe today, to stay fixed in their constellation patterns night after night, year after year, century after century, never changing their relative positions. If Earth was truly a tilting, wobbling, spinning space ball, as NASA and modern astronomy proclaim, rotating 1,000 miles per hour on its axis, revolving 67,000 miles per hour around the Sun, spiraling 500,000 miles per hour around the galaxy, and shooting off several million more miles per hour through the universe, the star patterns would never look the same 2 nights in a row, let alone be fixed in exactly the same constellations for thousands upon thousands of years. The reality is that the Earth and Polaris do not move, while everything else in the heavens revolves over Earth and around Polaris east to west, like in a planetarium dome. Our Earth planetarium, however, is so vast that perspective won't allow any observer to see all the stars simultaneously from any one vantage point. We can see Polaris, Ursa Major and Minor, and other northern constellations from every point north of the equator simultaneously, but conversely cannot see the so-called South Pole star, Sigma Octantis, the Southern Cross, or other outer constellations simultaneously from every point south of the equator, because
And again, one of the major issues, one of the major fallacious points of globe earthers is that this would be expected while they stack the circular reasoning, false premise, red herring, logical fallacy stacks regarding assuming the continents are where they are claimed to be in relation to each other in Antarctica, and that Antarctica is what it is claimed to be. And that doesn't really line up either, because you can see the Cayman Islands well above the equator. You can still see the Southern Cross. So even on the globe model is not consistent in any way anyway. But yeah, I suppose I should bring up the receipt for that. Let me bring that up just in case any goofs doubt that. I've gone over it a bunch of times before. But let's do it again for the cheap seats, or those who have not been here before and not familiar. And again, this is not from like a flat Earth channel or anything.
Islands, a really neat treat.
This is just from an astronomy channel, and they actually have this here, and you could see it well above the equator. Cayman Islands, hundreds or even over 1,000 miles above the equator, and you can clearly see the Southern Cross. So much for the globe model there. So, but again, going back to what I was saying about the continents being where they're claimed to be. So how do you know where you're looking where you think you're looking? So, again, for whatever reason, globe earthers, scientism cultists, like, they're not even on this children's logical comprehension level to even understand the arguments being mounted, let alone how to refute them. And this kind of goofery is why I actually picked the flat earth topic as being the absolute best topic for logical development, and it has nothing to do with what shape the earth is. It's the fallaciousness in the argumentation of the topic.
they all sweep over a great southern arc from their rise in the evening to their setting in the morning. Facing north, the stars turn counterclockwise from right to left. Facing south, they turn clockwise from left to right. Facing east, they rise in front and set behind, while facing west, they rise behind and set in front. So their apparent motion, angle, and inclination changes depending where you are on Earth and what direction you are facing. But their actual movement is always east to west.
And a lot of people get just really triggered by Dubé's illustrations here, or graphics. That's actually one of the reasons I think he's a shill. I mean, these are just really fancy graphics, especially way back in 2015 or even earlier, whenever he debuted these. Quite fancy stuff, quite fancy. But regardless, it really illustrates one possibility: where you are, in what direction you think you're looking at versus where you're actually looking at. And another thing globe earthers and scientism cultists, they really struggle with is how would you expect it to look if it were flat? The mark of an educated mind is considering a concept or idea as true without believing in it. So a lot of goofs, they're just too mentally weak to consider, well, just as a thought experiment, let's say flat earth is true. And if you're looking here and this is what it looks like, okay, maybe. That doesn't mean it's flat. There's no reason to believe it's flat based on that. But at least you can do thought experiments in good faith and understand these arguments first. But I also suspect a lot of goofs, like with humiliation fetishes, like Craig of Fight the Flat Earth, I think they don't even want to be good faith, because then they wouldn't be able to indulge their humiliation fetish in spiraling in these flat earth debates. So if everybody's following the illustrations on screen, I've actually gone over these before, and these are very helpful as a visual aid to where you think you're looking at versus where you might be actually looking at if the Earth is not a sphere. Because, again, a lot of these globe earther goofs, they apply the globe earth model to disproving the flat earth model. So they're using concepts or principles not in the flat earth model by pretending they're in there, and then saying, oh, look, see, it wouldn't work that way. The goofery off the charts. Off the charts goofery for this topic. And another interesting point regarding Stellarium. So Stellarium, they made a whole bunch of updates where they changed a bunch of stuff. I don't remember the exact year. I went over this on one live Q&A. But in Stellarium, the software, you used to be able to see what was accurate, and then they changed it because, it didn't line up with the globe or establishment dogma. So, curious stuff here. Alright, I'm going to go over one more video, and then we're going to get into the new flat earth model. So now that this primer is over for anybody on the globe side who is good faith, we will get into the new model. So one more video here. One more video. This is an interesting one on magnetism.
Oh, you mean like this? Is that what you're referring to? All the way around? Lining up with the latitudes, just like the compass? Because there's only one fixed direction to the center source of the magnetic field created by the source magnet, the point charge, whatever you want to call it. Strange how the equator lines up too, huh? Weird. Very strange. Looks like I have the exact same thing that you said I wasn't doing happening on the screen. Weird. Very strange. Strange coincidence. Oh, wait a second. My compass seems to be pointing in one direction. Like it always does. The bar magnet attracts iron at both sides because it's two different magnet fields.
Orientational polarizability, one fixed direction.
And watching scientism cultists cope spiral trying to explain this away is always fun. All right, without further ado, or should we make more ado? Let me check the comments real quick here. Okay. Let's go, study the text says, did want to say we can't determine the distance of the sun from the sun rays because the sun rays can be partly caused by perspective. The globe birth position argues the ray parallel. Yeah, they argue a lot of different things with how the light could scatter or bounce off of clouds. Yeah, study the text. You're a little early. Yeah, here's what we're going over. So this is the new model. Without further ado, let's break the internet. Yes, this is Alan of Space Audit's model here, and let's look at this video, breaking it down here, and prepare to have your mind shocked.
Every day, no matter where you are or where you think you live, you look up and you see the sky move. The sun traces an arc across it, the stars rise in the east, wheel overhead, and then disappear in the west. The moon follows its own path, the planets drift slowly against the background of stars, and if you stay up long enough and pay attention, you start to notice patterns, rhythms that repeat with extraordinary precision over days, months, and years. You don't need a theory to observe any of that, you just need to look. But somewhere between that observation and the explanation for it, a set of assumptions gets quietly inserted. A specific size for Earth, perhaps, a specific distance to the sun, a particular geometry that frames everything you're seeing before you've even had a chance to ask whether it independently fits.
And that's an excellent point there. This is the fallacy stack I've been talking about ad nauseum, where you're presupposing a house of cards first and then arguing at the top of a house of cards. That's the opposite of scientific and logical.
But if you could remove all that and start again with just the observer. That's the entire foundation of this ether cosmology conceptual model. It's built around a single observer, you, where you're standing, what you can see from there, and the geometry of the sky as it actually appears from your position on Earth. It's something that's easy to forget. Again, every observer on Earth, regardless of where they are, sees exactly half the sky at any given moment. Nobody sees the whole sky. Everyone sees half. A hemisphere of observation that's unique to your position and your time. The sky you see from New York tonight is not the sky you see from Sydney. The sun they're watching set, you're watching rise. The stars visible to you are below their horizon. You each have your own dome of vision, your own apparent sky, and your own personally observable hemisphere. The argument between the models is based around what produces that distinction, right? The globe argues that the hemisphere is created by physical Earth curvature coming up and blocking out that half of the sky. And the argument from the other side, I think, would be that it's an optical convergence of where the sky meets the ground and that humans cannot see forever and over great distances. The natural acuity limit means that you'll eventually be unable to see any further, and the optical convergence of the sky and the ground meet, and that's not due to ground curvature. So the observer-centric reality is what this model is built on. Ether cosmology here places you at the center of that dome. You choose your coordinates, your latitude, longitude, elevation, get your direction, you field the view, and then you watch the sky respond. It has two distinct layers, and the separation between them matters. First is the optical vault. That's what you see when you actually look up, the apparent position of the celestial objects as they appear to you from your location. The arc that the sun makes as it rises and crosses the sky, the low crescent in the winter, high one in the summer, symmetrical line if you happen to be exactly at the equator, the rotation of the stars around a polar convergence point overhead.
I mean, this is really fascinating, isn't it? Now, like I said, stellarium was my introduction to kind of questioning a lot of the astronomy. And keep in mind, for those that are not familiar, you could look up my history with flat Earth and geocentrism, actually, more specifically, because I was actually on forums around the year 2000, and there was one particular forum. I didn't save it. I should have saved it. I've saved certain things from the 90s on GeoCities sites, like with the NASA occult stuff that I thought would be taken down. I saved in the 90s. I wish I had saved some of the BBS boards from the late 80s, but the stuff from the but this forum, it was a geocentrism forum. I really didn't think it would be taken down. Maybe actually it hasn't been taken down. I just, for whatever reason, I can't remember the name of it. I just went on to other things, and I didn't think of it again until so many years later when Flat Earth came out. And then I remembered this forum that had over 200 physics professors currently teaching at universities who either believed in geocentrism or believed in the possibility of geocentrism. Now, none of them were talking flat Earth to my recollection. They were talking globe Earth, but a stationary globe Earth. And it was just fascinating. And then eventually I got into stellarium. And in stellarium, there were some very big holes in the globe Earth model. And yeah, it's curious. But then they had all these updates. And now they post hoc covered up a lot of the stuff. So I wonder if anybody has older versions of stellarium that weren't updated, because it has some similarities to this here that he's bringing up, which is curious.
The moon's path, the wandering of the planets against the fixed background stars, all of it rendered in a first-person vantage point exactly as any observer at those coordinates would perceive it. Second layer is true positions. You do have to toggle it on, and then you'll see the geographic calculated position, which is in the terrestrial sphere on the graticule, which is the terrestrial equivalent of the celestial sphere. And again, they typically call them ground positions, but it's defined first within the celestial coordinates using right ascension declination, and then translated to the appropriate latitude, longitude, via the one-for-one relationship of the terrestrial to the celestial spheres we went over, put forth by Ptolemy. And this model enveloping that principle, showing you the apparent and then the transcribed calculated geographic. And so it's also the apparent position that the same system every nautical almanac used, every real-world navigation technique, altitude, lines of corrections, lines of position, entirely based on this apparent position. The true position is always the derived layer in abstraction, never the directly measured one. And this model shows you both clearly separated, so you can always see exactly which is which.
And that's so critical. I mean, that's something, again, scientism called this, like the mental deficiency. They don't understand compare and contrast, because they're too busy stacking fallacies to understand compare and contrast. Like this is result A, this is result B, this is result C, and what do they mean in relation to each other, and what would be expected based on these variables versus other variables.
In terms of what you can do with it, you have full control. You can scroll through the time of day, a week, a year. It real time syncs to everything now. It shows every eclipse that's ever happened. You can watch the sun's path. Took any of the demos that shows 24-hour sun and moon analemma demonstrations, observer traveling north and south on the model, moon phases over a month, winter solstice, summer solstice, equinox, daylight, sunset, 20.
I mean, how fascinating is this? Like, these guys really did their homework with this to try to account for all of the variables. Very, very fascinating stuff. And I wonder if appeal to invincible ignorance, simply going nuh-uh repeatedly or denying repeatedly, is that the only cope globe earthers have? Or has any globe earther even attempted to look at this? Like, has Neil deGrasse Tyson, I mean, that guy's mentally disabled. I mean, that guy's retard maxing hard. But it would be funny if he tried to look at this, right?
24-hour sun, etc., etc. You have control to turn on any of these options: the moon, the sun, specific stars, tracking, satellite tracking, in-star catalogs, multiple astronomical calculation engines, multiple ephemerises, geocentric, heliocentric ephemerises, and it's all at your disposal to turn on and off and see the effect it makes when the data pipeline is reduced to right ascension declination derived in a unit sphere, which amounts to direction and a magnitude. So unit vector on a sphere.
Another interesting point is usually globe earthers just argue from a false dichotomy fallacy of, I mean, it's just multiple. I mean, it's just obviously just these incredibly stacked fallacies: circular reasoning, false dichotomy, hastily generalization, false premise, red herring, and a whole stack of straw men and reification fallacies. I mean, it's just really bizarre how they can't. I mean, a lot of it is collective narcissism, Dunning-Kruger, etc. But it's just like they can't, in good faith, do a simple thought exercise. Like, if this is the model, how would it work, and does it account for what is seen, instead of just going into triggered spirals?
And again, all of it, every calculation, every predicted position, every arc, every angle is derived without a single physical unit. No globe radius, no globe parameters, no distance to the sun, no circumference, etc., etc. In fact, no miles, no meters per second. Then it works entirely based on the unit sphere, directions expressed as unit vectors, angles as ratios on a unit circle, the positions.
I mean, this is kind of brilliant. I haven't been this impressed in a while, because what he just said, you're not stacking the presuppositions. So you're not including assumptions and presuppositions regarding, which is technically would be false premises if not supported scientifically. So by simply claiming, oh, the radius is the radius because it's the radius, which is what globe earthers do. If it's the radius, you have to prove it's the radius of the Earth, etc. But they're just multiple stacked circular reasoning, false premise, red herring logical fallacies. So here, they're at least attempting not to fall for any logical fallacy. I don't see a fallacy yet.
Of objects in the sky are resolved as pure angular coordinates, azimuth and altitude, which tell you where to look and nothing else. No assumption about how far away what you're looking at is. No assumption about how large anything is. Only the direction and the angle. Here's where it gets interesting. When a system strips out every physical constant and reduces itself entirely to directions and proportional relationships, which is what we argue they did with the globe, what you're left isn't less a complete model, and in one sense you're looking at a more honest one. It turns out that the constants you'd be tempted to insert aren't independently measured at all. They're all derived in ratios of each other. Distance to the sun, size of the sun, orbital periods, the gravitational constant. These are not separately confirmed quantities that happen to agree. They're self-consistent Weber ratios that were built to agree, because they was only ever based on real observation, and everything else is what you get when you manipulate the formula to fit it. As we argue all the time, right? Kepler didn't measure the distance to the sun. He established a relationship between period and orbital radius. Bradley didn't need the AU to calculate aberration. The radius term dropped out from his math entirely. You're left with a ratio of velocities expressed with timing. And the system works because relationships and ratios are constant and consistent, not because the absolute values were measured. And this model is showing you exactly that. We don't tell you what the sky is. We don't claim to know the dynamic cause of what moves everything in the universe or what's moving everything in the sky. What we're showing you is what an observer sees, clearly, interactively, foundational layers, and without inserting a single assumption about scale, size, distance. Remove the units, what remains are relationships. Come explore the model for yourself.
Fascinating stuff here. You can go to allenspaceaudits.github.io/conceptual_flat_earth_model. And yeah, check it out for yourself. But it appears to be built fallacy free. It appears to be built logically. Now, whether or not this is representative of true reality, if true reality really is this, that's a separate question, right? But is this model internally consistent? Because the globe Earth model does not appear to be. Even if that doesn't mean the globe Earth model isn't true. You know, obviously the fallacy exists. Just because something is fallacious doesn't mean it's not true. If I say 1 + 1 is 2 because pink unicorns declared it and that's what it is, you know, the appeal to pink unicorns would be fallacious, but 1 + 1 would still be 2. Austin MP says, when I was a kid, we had to go to a separate class and we did a lot of red herrings and they would see who could figure it out fastest. Really fun. Yeah, when I was a kid, we learned about logic in school, but then that disappeared. That disappeared for most of the 90s. So very curious, because logic used to be part of the curriculum. Then they had critical thinking left over a little bit, but that did not include fallacies. So critical thinking and deductive reasoning was always in the curriculum, but it was super limited, and it did not include logical fallacies. Not even in college, other than, you know, one course on logic within philosophy. Big Pine says, Flat Earth is a psyop, not because the Earth is a globe, but because it's turned into YouTube streamer drama no better than all these children video game streamers. You could argue worse, right? Because actual children video game streamers, they're children. It's like they have a little bit of an excuse, right? But supposed adults like Craig of Fight the Flat Earth or whatever, they don't have an excuse. So, yeah, very, very curious here. Study the text says, never really get nothing but nah, you're dumb responses anyway. Haven't had a real rebuttal. Jeff U1P says, explaining flat Earth requires understanding of psychology first and physics after. I would argue you don't even need a lot of physics. Yeah, psychology and logic is first. The physics is very minimal that you would need. Truth Connexus RG says, the actual stars have correlating latitude circles in the sky working from Polaris southward and has an equal amount of stars in between each latitude set of lines, 10 degrees for each set of lines. That is fascinating if true. Wow. Correlating. So, from Polaris southward, they have an equal amount of stars between each latitude set, 10 degrees for each set of lines. Huh. That would be, if that's true, that would be quite coincidental if there is no creator, right? Marco says, Tomb of Illumination channel gets into how the luminaries move. Official Ethan W says, Bruce, high schools should require a debate class to graduate, obviously including logical fallacies as part of the curriculum. Well, that, I mean, but the whole point of the education system is to dumb down the masses in the Western world, to collapse the West, to just create just these unthinking drones just as taxpayers. So why would they teach logical fallacies? CJ says that was Shane St. Pierre speaking. Shout out Shane St. Pierre. Marco says college physics cosmology is all based on the presupposed R value of the Earth. That's not the only presupposition. There's a whole bunch of presuppositions. That's why I found that one forum very interesting, because actual professors, physics and astronomy professors, were discussing geocentrism seriously. Like, that was the first time I ever saw that. So it's interesting. Truth Connexus RG says the illuminaries are set in the dynamic ether and the magnetic field torus lines create the spin effect. And it's from all of the telluric currents creating electromagnetic spin forces underground. That's, where did you get that information from? I've heard some of that before, but not all of that. CJ says, Dr. Gerardus Bao, PhD in astronomy, he argues Earth is stationary at the universe's center. To him, stellar parallax and satellite orbits are caused by space-time physically rotating around our planet. Interesting. Dr. Robert J. Bennett, PhD physics, argues relativity allows fixing Earth's velocity to zero, claiming centrifugal forces are generated by the rest of the cosmos swirling around us. Man, if you haven't checked out Relativity Debunked here on MindShock, check that out for a systematic point-by-point destruction by the one and only Run Z Cow in easy-to-understand children's terms. Dr. Neville, you got a lot of You got a lot here, CJ. Dr. Luka Popov, PhD, theoretical physics. He uses Machian physics to show a rotating universe generates a force field that mimics all celestial observations without the Earth needing to move. CJ says Dr. Neville Jones, PhD in physics, quantum optics, argues mainstream science misinterprets light speed experiments which actually point to the Earth holding a stationary position in space. Well, what's weird is all of this was known, right? I mean, you have the fingerprints of God from the Sloan survey data going way back. Let me get that on the screen. I mean, this was all known for quite a long time, right? Oh, well, YouTube finally started lagging. It was actually running smooth for a little bit. Now it started lagging. Yeah, you mentioned that before. CJ says, smart people know what real science is. My high school teacher taught us flat earth science back in the 90s, Pennsylvania public school. Yeah, that's definitely an outlier, though. I've talked to quite a lot of people. You're the only one who said that about the 90s. Okay, here it is. So this is the, I've gone over this before as well. This is the Sloan survey data with the Earth at the center. This is 1997, but this was all talked about as early as the 70s, if not earlier. Here there's a reference to 1972. So, yeah, very curious. That's why they called it the fingers of God, because the Earth is at the center. And a lot of scientism cultist goofs, they just hallucinate that none of this is true, etc., etc. Run Boston Bear says there are some great Dr. Bennett convos on ether cosmology. Study the Text says these people out there hallucinate. There's no alternate cosmological theories. Yeah, it's weird. And what the goofs never learn, like authority worshipping cultist goofs, like these bootlickers, I don't know if it's just extreme Stockholm syndrome or whatever, but they completely ignore all of history because all of the prevailing scientific models of their time were all proven false, according to the mainstream. But they still continue believing all of the mainstream positions. I mean, it's just weird. Austin MP with an excellent question here says, what if Steven Seagal said the Earth is a globe? Yeah, I couldn't find him commenting on the shape of the Earth whatsoever, but that would be curious. That would be curious. Now, in ancient Tibetan cosmology, it is, it's mostly the snow globe cosmology. So if he's a Buddhist and a reincarnated Lama, buddy-buddy with a Dalai Lama, I would assume that's the cosmology he would go with, right? Karate Master 13 says, I was born in 99. At around 13, 14, I was skeptical. It really increased in 2020. Yeah, I was really skeptical about heliocentrism versus geocentrism. I just hadn't really thought about flat Earth at all until, of course, but geocentrism, yes. And I was already familiar with all the countless debunkings of the fraud of relativity and the history of fraud within physics and the politicization of so-called science versus scientism. So I already knew all that. So by the time Flat Earth kind of exploded on the interwebs in 2015 or even earlier, official Ethan W. says, if we had a Bruce McGuire drinking game, we would all be hammered. Could be fun, you never know. Oh, come on. Logical people, or at least myself, do not drink alcohol. We do not imbibe spirits, opening up to possession from the interdimensional realms. But drinking water or some kind of healthy probiotic sodas, game on. Anybody have any of that? What was that? I forgot. What was I drinking the other day? I think I was drinking, was it date cola made from dates? Some nice organic date cola. It's like a probiotic cola, a probiotic tea made from dates, all organic. Austin MP says, I'm cutting out sodas again. Yeah, I haven't drank soda in decades. But I mean, like what is classified as soda, like the processed sugar garbage. But yeah, I'll drink some kombucha, some teas, some so-called probiotic sodas, but they're all organic. Austin MP says, I stopped for a while, but Mountain Dew and Sundrop had me back in the game. Yeah, you... I don't even know what Sundrop is, and I never liked Mountain Dew. Even when I was a kid, I did not like Mountain Dew. All right, so does anybody have any other questions here? So this is a fascinating model here from Alan of Space Audits. So you have this toroidal field here, and you have everything calculated without presupposing distances, without presupposing the Earth is any shape. It's simply, you have what appears to be planar, because what you're standing on appears to be a plane. Although, who knows if it's something... You know what? The Earth, like, it's kind of weird. Because you theoretically, if the Earth is an incredibly large sphere, and then you have these carved out flat areas with domes, if it were big enough, that could be true if all of the celestial bodies are confined to each dome, right? And no, that's not a new McGuire theory of cosmology. I'm just going through all the possibilities here. So there it is. I mean, it's where's Toot Sacco when you need him, or any of the other triggered goofs about flat Earth? I wonder what their rebuttals here would be. I mean, it's just curious. I mean, I'm sure we'll get some in the comments. We'll get some in the comments. Nobody's in here a lot. And is there not a single globe earther in here anymore? I mean, we never had a lot because we would just laugh at their Dunning-Kruger and point out their fallacies. But, yeah, no, there was usually always at least one. But apparently, out of all the people in here, there's not a single globe earther in here. Curious. So one final video here I'm going to go over with is just more food for thought. I know a lot of people do not like, they do not like the moon map theory, but I'm fascinated by it. I am absolutely fascinated by it, and here's a new video I haven't seen on it before. Check this out. This is very interesting. Does the moon actually show a reflection of the Earth, and does that prove a planar Earth? How curious is this, fair use? How curious is that? I've never seen it outlaid like this before, but... I mean, the coincidence stack here, if it's not for it to just happen to look like that. And if you haven't checked out the greatest documentary of all time, by the way, is there supposed to be a part 2 of that? Seorsa to be free? There's supposed to be a part 2 of that soon, right? That didn't come out yet. We'll have to go over that. It's just so curious, though, isn't it? And the potential other lands on it. It's so curious. I mean, how can your curiosity not be piqued here? I mean, just the mind-shocking revelations here. Let's watch that again. I mean, just the graphics here are so interesting. And I was actually thinking something similar to what CJ said here in the chat. Some monks were saying that a long time ago that the moon is there a snapshot of Earth frozen in time, and the striations on it are the reflection of the dome. What's curious, though, yeah, if it might not necessarily, if it is a snapshot, it might not be a perfect representation of what our surface looks like now, because if the Mayans are correct and the Earth has already ended, or whatever, the cycles, civilization cycles, there's already been 7 or 8, if this is the 8th cycle, and all of the previous cataclysms was destroyed the Earth, changed the terrain, the surface. Is this what the Earth was, even if it's not it now? Austin MP says, I believe whatever this proves. I mean, it's just so fascinating, though. Like, what are the chances statistically that this could reflect the continents, even if it's not 100% exact, with the spacing of the oceans? I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, that's like what? Winning the lottery every day for the rest of time? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. It's so crazy. And what's on all the extra land? If you haven't checked out the greatest documentary of all time, or the most important documentary of all time, rather, here on the MindShock channel, I go over the Sorsa to be free. Run Boston Bear says, let me know if you ever want to get Joe Hanvey on. He's a good friend and believes in the moon map theory. Yeah, we'll have to schedule that. I am very behind on my interviews, as always. Next on my agenda is the Oklahoma City event. I've been looking over that one for over a decade, possibly close to 2 decades of material I have to present on that. Let me get that done, and then I could start scheduling the next round of interviews. CJ said they had like bowls of water and they could look at outside and use as telescopes or something. Jeff U1P says that's what Captain Gunn said. Scott Hawkins says, I heard an update to Sorsa is in the works from the captain himself. Yeah, I think it was supposed to already be out. I think they were talking about getting it out like 1 or 2 weeks ago. But I'm sure it'll be worth the wait, like the first one, which it takes quite a lot to MindShock Bruce McGuire, but that one did the trick. That one did the trick. So many questions here, but this is very, very interesting regarding this new model from Ether Cosmology without utilizing presupposed distances or sizes. So it's just so interesting that there actually are scientific logical people out there. Quite fascinating stuff. Quite fascinating stuff. But yeah, I don't know how this isn't breaking the internet. Perhaps it will after this episode. Shocks everybody's mind. Welcome, Sandra. We're just finishing up here. I didn't want this one to go too long. I want it to be as brief as possible so that way people new to the flat earth theory can look at this, look at all of the primer material, the main arguments, and the presuppositions and fallacies, and then engage in good faith conversation. Because again, I'm not claiming the earth is flat or a globe. All I do is point out the fallaciousness, point out adherence or non-adherence to the scientific method. So I hope everybody found another edition of the MindShock podcast interesting. If you want to help support MindShock, help logic and reason return to the world where it is quickly going extinct as evidenced in any flat earth debate. Painfully obvious. You can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. Make sure you're subscribed, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.